This is The Morning Drive with Chris Beckham on News Talk 105.9 WVGA.
All right, back on The Morning Drive on this Friday morning. This interview segment brought to you by Deep South Sanitation. If you live in an area where city or county pickup is not available, call Deep South Sanitation. Kerry Scarborough and his staff at 559-0200. They can take care of your garbage for you. Safe, reliable, affordable, and experienced. It's Deep South Sanitation, 559-0200. Glad to be joined this morning by our good friend, Drew Jubera. Drew, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Chris. I'm great. How are you doing?
We're doing fantastic down in what we hope is your adopted new hometown of Valdosta. I tell you,
right. Well, it has been that, for sure.
I know. And by the way, happy Father's Day to you coming up Sunday. I love when I heard you talk about how you were going on vacation and your son said, "Let's go to Valdosta." I thought that's fantastic. That's a smart kid you're raising.
That he's a pretty smart kid, and he has a twin sister as well, who he tries to keep up with. But no, it is amazing. I mean, you know, they came down pretty often while I was down there for the season, and you know, Valdosta is one of those towns that's just small enough, and they were part of something particular enough that, you know, within 1 weekend they knew everybody they needed to know, and and everything they needed to know, and for them there is no more exotic place than Valdosta. I mean, you could tell them they could go to Paris or they could go to Disney World, and they pick Valdosta every time. So,
well, that just shows they're right-thinking Americans, and we're glad of that. So.
Right.
Listen, congratulations! I know your new book, which is going to be out in September, Must Win: A Season of Survival for a Town and Its Team, about the Valdosta Wildcat program. I've never written a book, Drew. I'm envious of you because I know it takes it's great when it comes out and you get to celebrate and talk about it a lot, but the work that goes into it, I cannot imagine, and I doubt most people can that haven't been through it. It's got to be a labor of love, but also a lot of hard work. So congratulations.
Well, I appreciate that. I wouldn't envy me, but you know, and I think in some ways, actually, Chris, I kind of underestimated it. You know, I'd done a lot of magazine journalism over the years, and I thought, well, this will just be a bigger magazine piece, but it became a lot more than that. And I'll tell you, a lot of it became a lot more than that in the writing, when you really sort of try to get into some of the folks here and realize how much of, especially with the players, how much of who they are is transforms itself out on the playing field itself.
Well, it's and that's interesting you mentioned that, because when I think of you doing this book, of course, I'm sure you got established great friendships and relationships with the coaches and with some of the fans, of course, who are very passionate about Wildcat football. But we don't often think about your relationship with the players, who are really what this whole thing is about, and their journey through a season. But you did. You got to be friends with a lot of them. Yeah,
no, you know, and some of them were, well, most of them were wide open, and a lot of them were very accommodating right away, and others, it just took a little longer. I mean, look, I was just the guy who parachuted in, and they didn't know me from Adam, and they rightfully were, you know, I don't know if it was distrustful, they were just wary and needed to get to know me, but I think I connected with a lot of them. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I had one of them, Philip Moore, better known as Swole, was in town, and just called up and came over for dinner and hung out. And, you know, much to my kids' delight, having a Wildcat in the house, and they were telling people all through the neighborhood who were just sort of looking at them, you know, quizzically, wondering what were they really talking about. So, but no, it was great hanging around those guys.
Now, and also congratulations, because you can also pre-order the book now, and a lot of people have been doing that because it's been very popular on Amazon and places like that. Tell us a little bit about the order so far.
Well, it actually has been gratifying that it was sort of announced that the book was coming out a couple of weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, and it immediately went up into the top 5 new and upcoming books on in football books on Amazon, and in the top 20 of all football books.
Wow.
Which, as I looked through that, which I'd never really looked through that sort of thing before, I saw about 10 of those top 20 were various editions of Friday Night Lights, which is still, sells like hotcakes.
Mm-hmm.
And but no, it's a good thing to do. I mean, it's a way to guarantee getting the book. It comes out September 4th, and as I've said before, this weekend you can sort of get a gift card and pre-order it for Father's Day if you're still desperate for a gift or want to throw something else on there. So that's where it is.
Great idea. You can go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and pre-order that so you'll get your copy right when it comes out. And when it comes out, I'm sure we'll have some book signings set up here locally. And Drew, love to have you back down here for some of those and talk about, I'm sure you'll have some set up at some of the local bookstores and possibly, I guess, maybe around some of the games as well.
That's what we're hoping to do. Yeah, all that's getting worked out right now.
Fantastic. So, again, September the 4th is when Must Win comes out. Talk about, is this your first book that you've written, Drew?
It is.
Yeah.
I worked for newspapers and magazines for a long time, and this came out of a newspaper story that I did, and I'm just glad it did. It was one of those stories you do and realize there's so much more there and so much more potential in a story, and I'm just grateful I was able to have the chance to do it.
I remember when we talked earlier a few months back, and you talked about it was kind of one of the toughest things was to kind of say, okay, I have enough now. Let's go write the book, because you went through the season. Then we had the terrible tragedy of James Eunice, who I know you got to know, and his missing, and then his death, and also we had the consolidation thing going on. So it just kind of seemed like something kept happening, and at some point you had to say, okay, I got to go write.
No, and that's exactly right. I mean, it felt like I could, still be down there reporting it, and in fact, I mean, the book is on that season, and it made a natural storyline for the whole thing, so that I added a kind of epilogue, which, got into those very issues you just talked about, including, sort of the following season, Valdosta's win over Lowndes, which was a very big, marker for the program. And, but all those things just kept, when you're dealing with a program with, over 100 kids and dozen coaches and a school the size of Valdosta High in that community, life just continues, and it all seems to be relevant to what happened before. So, at a certain point, I did have to almost pull myself away from it to start writing.
And, of course, the book, again, is called Must Win. We're speaking with author Drew Jubera, who it chronicles the season of Valdosta Wildcat football. When you start to put all this information together, Drew, and I can't imagine how many interviews and hours of interviews that you had, how do you start to figure out to put this thing together? That, to me, would seem to be the toughest part of the whole process. Well,
and it was, and what I really sat down and started to do is realize there were, a large handful of people who, in a book become characters, who could really concentrate on. And, there were 3 or 4 or 5 players who were really concentrated on. A couple of them were pretty obvious, but also very interesting, like Malcolm Mitchell and Jay Rome and his family. And then there was the season itself, which provided its own sort of natural timeline to things. And it also, had Coach Gillespie, who it was his first year. Mm-hmm. And so sort of watching him try to rebuild the program and go through the steps that he methodically goes through to do that, all sort of, once you sort of settled on those kinds of things, it helped organize itself.
And really, I mentioned this to Coach Gillespie, who we had on our program earlier this week. I really give him a lot of credit, because it's one thing if you've been at a school for 20 years and you're kind of an icon there, and then, this guy calls you, wants to write a book, and you say, yeah, come on in, you got access to everything that we have. It's quite another for a guy who's at the first year at that school to give somebody that kind of access. So I really give him a lot of kudos for doing that, because not that you were here to sensationalize anything, but still, he's brand new to the program. He wants to make sure that he gets off on the right note, but yet he still opened all the doors to you.
No, I have to tell you, I was pretty astonished at how quickly he accepted this, and what that told me right away was that this was a guy who was very confident about what he did and secure in what he did. And while he was new to the program and it was a new job, he'd done that sort of thing before, and he knew what he was doing, and if someone wanted to come along and watch it, that was fine with him. And I give him, and this book could not have happened without him, and in the way he was so open about everything.
You had to come into this project with some kind of expectations or some kind of preconceived notion about Valdosta High football. It's the winningest program in America and one of, if not the most famous programs in America. Did what you find meet your expectations? Was it a lot different?
Well, I actually came in with maybe fewer preconceptions than you think. I really didn't know which way the season was going to go. What I feared most was that it was going to be just sort of a mediocre season. If it had been a really bad season, that would have been one thing, and as it turned out, it was a pretty terrific season. I guess maybe the biggest surprise was just sort of how far they had to go. While they had the talent there was just a lot about that program and about people's attitudes and that had to be rebuilt, and it was clear that the program had fallen a long way, and a lot of that had to do with other programs sort of rising. I mean, times had changed, and population had shifted there, and that sort of thing, which made it a whole different kind of deal to deal with, and that's what I walked into, just sort of seeing if things could be turned around.
Well, they did turn around, and we saw more evidence of that last year. Of course, the defending region champions, and I know a lot of people are excited about this season, but also a lot of people excited about this book. Again, it's called Must Win. You can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can pre-order it. That's a nice Father's Day gift. Even if you've already bought your dad something, hey, add this to the list, and they will really be excited about it. It's going to be coming out widespread September the 4th, and so we'll have Drew back down, I know, around that time to let you know where you can get it here locally. But even if you're not a Valdosta High fan, it's a great story. It seems like even without reading it, just being around football as long as I have, you could almost do some type of project like this about any football program, because all these kids have their own stories, their own backgrounds. They come from different sides of town and have their own things that they've got to deal with. But when you do focus it around a program that has this much tradition, this much expectation, it does make it a great read, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Chris. And I mean, the intent really was for it to be, Valdosta football was really kind of the perfect lens to look into high school football and kids just, struggling with a lot of things and trying to make it, or at least trying to do something with themselves. That's what this book is really about. And it's clearly centered on Valdosta, but it's about high school, and it's about high school football anywhere.
Real quick, I've got to ask you, because you mentioned Friday Night Lights, which has kind of been the book that has been the most successful book about high school football, and really has turned into a franchise, really, with movie and television and everything else. Did you, having that in the background already out there, did you think about it much? Had you read it, and I know you didn't want to base your book exactly like that, although obviously the subject matter is similar.
Right. No, it's the 800-pound elephant in the room, and anyone who does a book like this, that's the measuring stick. And in fact, the author Buzz Bissinger has a copy of the manuscript right now, and he's trying to read it to write a blurb for the book, but he's also promoting his new book right now, so I don't know if he's going to get time to do that. I will tell you this. I hadn't read it because it was one of those books that when it came out, which now is, it came out in 1990, it was one of those books that so permeated the culture that almost felt like I knew everything about it without having to read it.
Yeah.
And that's continued. However, once I got into this and was ready to start writing, I thought, maybe I should really read the thing. And I bought it and sat down to read it, and I read the first couple of pages, and I was so horrified at how good it was that literally I had to put it down, and I didn't want to pick it up again. And I didn't. I still haven't read it because I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to get too intimidated by it. So, whatever matches that is purely coincidental at this point. But again, the reason that book did so well is it was about a big program in Texas, but it really was about high school football and high school and life in a relatively small town. As much as it was about that particular program, and that's what I hope this is too.
Well, it's going to be, and I know just the excerpts that we've seen, not of this book, but I know the piece that I guess was in the ESPN magazine talking about Jay and his dad, Jay and Stan Rome, that you wrote. It was a great, just very well written piece. Almost in a chill down your spine, listening to a bit of their story, and that's the kind of thing that we can expect. I know in the new book, Must Win: A Season of Survival for a Town and Its Team. By Drew Jubera. It's going to be out widespread September the 4th. You can go ahead and pre-order it now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble before it gets out widespread, and it'll be delivered right to your doorstep. And Drew, again, congratulations. This is, again, a feat that I think most people don't realize how tough it is to do something like this, but I know you enjoyed doing it while it was a lot of hard work. Do you have any other projects? You going to write another book sometime?
Well, I'll think about that when I actually believe that this thing is over. So, I literally turned in the final edits to the manuscript just last Wednesday, a week ago Wednesday. So, right now I'm staying. My wife says that I'm the new Manny at the house, and I'm sort of herding my two children. One of which I just see with his foot-high bed has just woken up. So I think the clock is starting for me.
That's like asking somebody with a newborn, hey, when are you going to have another baby? Just give me a minute on this one first. So.
That's exactly it, Chris.
Drew, listen, great to talk to you, and great success with this. We'll look forward to talking to you soon whenever it comes out in September.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks so much.
Take care, buddy. Drew Jubera, the author of Must Win: A Season of Survival for a Town and Its Team. It's a gorgeous-looking book. The front cover's already out, and it looks great, and I think it's going to be a great read. You can order it now and be a nice Father's Day gift, so take advantage of that. We'll take a break and come right back. More of The Morning Drive coming up right after this on News Talk 105.9. This is WVGA.